Hey everybody, welcome back to Sergeant's Talk TV. Big Mike's here.
And Jason.
Hey guys, we got a good one for you tonight. We got our very first interview, and guess what? It's not with a Marine. It ain't with an Army guy. It's with somebody from the Chair Force.
It is the one service we give the hardest time to, and they were like, pick me. I want to tell my story.
And here's the good thing. He has a better chair he's sitting in right now than we do.
I'm on some homemade cushions and a camper dinette. So I honestly was thinking about taking the back down and sitting on it just to have more cushion. But
so, yeah. Hey guys, I'm in Oklahoma. Jason's over in Tennessee right now. He's originally lives over in Arkansas. Anything, you guys having a good time in Tennessee? Are you working harder?
Well, yes and yes.
Yes.
I wouldn't necessarily say working harder. We're working differently. There's grass here. Like I don't have that in Arkansas, so I can mow.
Because we know you can grow a good rock.
I can, and they're still growing great. Like we've been up to date with the kids and my aunt that are back at the ridge, and they said, "Yep, the rocks are still growing."
There you go.
So yeah, we're staying a different kind of busy, enjoying the time we're getting. We're getting to see some more family and spend some time with them. So it's one of those, as much as we hate doing it when we're at home in Arkansas, but now that we're here, we're making sure to get out and take those relaxation times because we have projects we want to do here, but they're kind of limited. Like it's not our place to be able to just jump in and take everything.
Yeah.
But try to get them caught up and get it into a manageable position. So,
okay. Yeah, understand. Hey, so guys, we got a good one for you. Hey, you guys might know this gentleman on the YouTubes as Webb's Webb. Okay. But his name is Ralph Webb. We're going to bring him up here in a few minutes. Before we do that, we want to say hello to the people that's in the chat. Hey, and I did see somebody, I think it was Judy. She did a salute. And when you guys, if you haven't been here before and you see someone put salute, what we do here on Sergeant's Talk TV, if you want to shout out one of your family members, a friend, a child, or whatever that's serving or has served in the military, we use salute and then their name, their branch, or whatever you want to put it in there about them, and we salute them for their service. So first off, I see Joe Fix It For You's in here.
Welcome in, Joey, and I see Teresa Jukowitz has made it in.
She is. And Judy Herman says, salute to my brother, Gerald Herman, and my brother-in-law, Donald William, both Air Force. There you go. Thank you for your service.
And we have a public service announcement here, folks. There's an Our Flippin' Homes farmstead, not homestead, Our
Have you seen the logo?
And I can't see it fully on this one yet. She had messaged Tara and they had told her already that this was going to happen. But y'all, this is Dawn. Hat Creek Homestead is not Hat Creek anymore.
My favorite female Marine. They changed their channel name.
She changed crayon colors and she said, nope, I'm not running with this anymore. We're going to Flippin' Farmstead.
There you go. Hey, there's Cookie there. Lila Newton's here. There's MT Homestead. Sergeant Major's in the house.
Sergeant Major made it in the house. Got to keep us in line. We never know what we're going to do.
That's right.
Where do we got now? Neil S. made it in. Hello, Neil.
Yes. Dana Mason's here. Hey, Mike and Jason. Tim and Stella and I are here lurking back at the hospital this week, kidnapped a stowaway. There you go.
Stella is my little BFF. Hi, Stella.
There you go. Oh, that's right. I remember her from the meetup.
Yeah.
over in Arkansas.
She got me with the pie, and I got dunked in the dunk tank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. There's Miss Arlene. How you doing, Arlene?
I see Jesse and Lisa, Lazy Days Ahead, have made it
All
in.
right.
They're saying hello, everybody.
Reverend Dreams in here. Welcome, brother.
We must be scrolling about the same pace.
There's Rainy Ridge. The Rainy Ridge is in here.
And I see my neighbor holding down his other little ridge landing over Veterans Landing. Ricky Smith made it in.
There's RNF Firestone Chickens is in the house. Pappy Smurf's here. Let's see. Linda Peterson's here.
There's Joey's other half. Oh, Ginger Snap, but not for nothing homestead.
Ginger Snap in the house. Love me some Ginger Snap cookies. No,
got Daniel Tierney. He said he's here. He's just listening.
All right. Angie.
Our favorite VA nurse.
Angie. She's in the house.
She's got to keep us in line.
VA nurse. And
you know, I think she shows up more when we're not like bashing the VA. I've kind of seen that. She's like,
I got to tell Terry, please be nice when you answer that, Terry. Neil S. says, empty homestead. Hey, Terry, have you had enough of Big Mike's retirement yet?
I mean, it might be safe to say that Big Mike has resumes going out, but he's not the one sending them.
Well, I will tell you that I did my interview with the Social Security. They've already finished the Social Security part. And then I had Friday, besides going to Muskogee, another story, is I had my interview with SSDI for the disability part. So they interviewed me. That was a longer one than the original one. So we'll see what happens there. See what they end up giving me and stuff like that. So we'll see. All right. So we've said hello to everybody in here, and we'll continue to say as people come in. We got 33 people in here. We welcome each and every one of you. So without
you all being in here.
Oh yeah. My grandfather, Charles Roof, deserves a salute. He flew a B-52 in World War II, was shot down over France. The French hit him and fixed his broken leg. There you go.
Wow. Well, definitely salute to your grandfather, Nyla.
That's right. And don't forget the thumbs up. There you go. Thank you, Ginger Snap. All right, so without further ado, we're going to bring up Airman, let's see, Senior Airman Ralph Webb.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Good. Hey, so how's your day gone so far?
So far, so good.
Well, there you go.
It's been a regular day
so far,
for me.
so good. Depending on
Not
what
over
we
yet.
talk about. Hey,
Yep.
So to start this off, hey, tell everybody who you are and a little bit about your career.
Okay, as Mike said, my name's Ralph Webb. I live in North Georgia, just about 45 minutes north of Atlanta, up in the nice North Georgia mountains where it's nice and green. I spent 8 years in the Air Force, 76 through 83, early to late. So it was just under 8 years. Enjoyed my time immensely. I did a lot of cool things. Of course, like anything else, good times, bad times, but overall, very good time. I was in just post-Vietnam. So I never had any problems, but it was not a popular time to be in the military. Like I said, I never dealt with anybody giving me any hassle or anything about being in the military, but it was just, you didn't advertise the fact that you were in the military.
Yeah.
So you just kind of kept a low key about everything. We didn't wear uniforms around much. We weren't supposed to anyway, but we didn't wear our uniforms around very much outside of duty. We ourselves were not supposed to, because we were supposed to keep an even lower profile than normal people, but
Yeah.
just from what I did. But after that, when it was time for my second reenlistment to come up, I had just gotten married and had a new child, and I didn't want my kids having to deal with moving around like the military requires you to. When I was a kid, we moved around a lot. My dad was an aircraft engineer, so we went where the good jobs were. And we kind of moved from house to house too, just even in North Georgia, just upgrading houses, building our own houses and stuff like that. So I moved around a lot, and I did not want my kids to go through that. So when it was time to re-up, I decided to get out. The skills that I had learned in the military allowed me to get a very good job. And that's where I am today. I spent 38 years working at Travelers Insurance in their data processing center here in Norcross, doing all kinds of IT stuff, a little bit of coding, a little bit of everything. We worked with everything from mainframes to PCs and everything in between, servers, maintaining, connecting, cabling, uninstalling, all kinds of stuff with PCs and IT stuff. That's why I'm good with computers. It's just something I'm kind of good at, is computers. I kind of get how they work, and they don't scare me. So they have a power button. I have control. I have ultimate control. So also I used to have a sign on my desk at work that said, this machine does not have a brain, use your own. So
there you go.
Kind of applied that a lot too.
Yeah.
That's just kind of a quick synopsis of what I've done and where I've been. I've kind of lived all over the place, between living in a bunch of small cities here in North Georgia and just traveling around between the military and visiting all my relatives that live all over the place. So
yeah. Okay.
Kind of a quick idea on that one.
Hey, we want to say hello to Good Enough Homesteads in here.
Hello.
You made it.
Hey, everybody.
All right.
Anybody knows me too knows that I'm terrible at watching chat. So.
So why the Air Force?
Okay, a little bad.
You had family that was in before, so
yeah, both my parents served in World War II, and my aunt, my dad's sister. That's how my dad and my mom met, was through my aunt, through those two. They were both flight nurses. My dad was an aircraft engineer, so he was stuck in an office.
Oh, so your aunt
doing airplane stuff.
She was the little matchmaker, huh?
Yeah, I don't know the full story on exactly where they met, but I know that they met because my mom and my dad's sister were stationed together.
Oh, okay. So why did you choose the Air Force?
A little backstory on that. I played all through high school, pretty much all my whole life. I played soccer. I played soccer at a pretty high level. I was never a great player, but I was good enough to have scouts look at me. I hurt my knee in high school, and again, I wasn't a great player. My thing was more speed and intelligence than it was super moves. So between that, I'm short too. I'm only 5'6". I'm a little dude. So just some factors going in. At one point, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to pursue that as a career. I had been doing just like, I won't say odd jobs, but I've been a cook for a long time. So I was pretty proficient at cooking in restaurants and stuff. Knew that's not what I really wanted to do the rest of my life. I'd had friends that were in the military, pretty much all branches. And everybody told me that if I was going to go into a branch, if I was going in to learn how to do something, to go Air Force. So just from their advice, I chose the Air Force.
I say the exact same thing to everybody who talks to me. They said, hey, my son wants to join the Army. And I say, don't do it. They go, whoa, you were in the Army. Why are you saying that? Because I was in the Army. I know. Don't do it. I said, because every time I visited an Air Force base, Ramstein, even when I went to Incirlik, Turkey, they were happier than I was. Okay. And I like their PXs and their commissaries better.
Yep.
Okay. Because ours are shitholes. I'm sorry. Okay. And so I always tell them, hey, if they're going to go into anything, I said, what kind of grades did the kid get? And, oh, you know, he was like a C student. All right, you ain't getting in. You need to go over there to the Marine Corps or the Army, because ain't nobody else going to take you.
Yeah. And that was the advice that I was being given. This was back in the mid 70s. So again, I'm not a young person. So this was a long time ago, but even then, that was before. I think that was even before the Army had their spec grades that are kind of the specialist grades in the Army for more technical type stuff now. So, I mean,
the Army used to have a specialist E4 all the way up to spec 7 instead of being an E7 sergeant, or sergeant first class. It was spec 7.
Do they not have those anymore? Do they not have those anymore? Or do they still have those? Okay. Spec
4, and that's where it ends. You're either a corporal or a specialist. That's it. Yeah.
Well, even the Air Force ranks when I was in changed the E4 grade, and it's funny because you call me a senior airman, but I'm actually, when I was in, I was an E4 sergeant, but they don't use sergeant anymore.
Yeah,
they actually changed. Yeah, they changed that while I was in. It used to be senior airman, or I think it was senior airman. And what they did was on the rank, on the chevron, they changed it to one had a silver star and one did not have a silver star. And the only difference was it was still the E4 pay grade, so you got paid the same. The only difference was to get to the E4 sergeant rank, you had to take some basically management courses to teach you how to supervise people, because as you go higher in that E4, as you're in that time frame, you start supervising people. So they felt that, we're throwing people who have basically just been worker bees. Now, all of a sudden, we're throwing them into supervising people, and we haven't shown them how to supervise people yet. So they did that, and then they finally got rid of it and got rid of using the term sergeant altogether.
Yeah.
So instead of being a split E4, the pay grade E4 now is just called senior airman, whereas before it was senior airman and sergeant, depending on where you stood in these classes and stuff. Is kind of confusing.
It is wild when you get to talk, because like Mike and I did an episode a while back of Marine Corps and Army, because obviously that's the experience that we had of their rank structure and giving people an idea of what it is. But as much as there's a lot of similarities between different services, like you talk to guys based on, hey, they were E4s, E5s, E6s, even, back when they were privates.
Right.
And a lot of the experiences, like we all kind of relatively go through the same thing of, hey, you're going to go to boot camp, basic training, whatever they want to call it. You're going to go to a school after that, and then you're going to go to your first duty station, and so that stays relatively the same kind of order of process. But what really just boggles my mind is, an E4 in every different branch is held to different levels of responsibility and what their abilities are.
Absolutely, yeah. Even when I was in, it was like that, because like I said, I had friends that were in all branches, including the coastguard.
I think it's because that's the point of the transition. You either have leadership ability or you don't.
Yep.
And even though you're proficient at your job, by that point, I think that is where the transition truly happens when a senior leader sees potential in the leadership part of that E4.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
All
that's
right,
why,
good.
so it doesn't bother me that you call me senior airman, because it's the E4 pay grade. For me, it's better to use that, because that way you relate to it more than if I say I'm a lance corporal or I'm a sergeant or I'm an airman or whatever, because that's just a title and a name. So
real quick, Ginger Snap from Not For Nothing says, Nikki made it to Belgium, and she is trying to adjust to the time difference first and
Nisi.
foremost.
I was like, Nikki, who are you talking about?
Yeah,
Nisi.
Nisi.
Okay.
Oh, is it Nisi?
Yeah.
What did I say, Nikki?
Yeah.
Oh, Nisi. Come on, man.
Hey, we're here for you, brother. We're here.
I know. This is like, we were watching something the other day, and somebody said, I want to do a shout out to little Bow Wow. I'm going, what parent in the world sat there when their child was born and said, I want to name my child Little Bow Wow? That's what I want to name him. And Terry goes, no, that's just what the friends call him. I said, okay. I thought that was the kid's name, Bow Wow. So anyway, hey, so you talked about, you came in 3 years after the end of Vietnam, because they called the ceasefire in 73, although we still had things going on over in Asia, Southeast Asia. So do you have any special stories about, I know you went to Lackland Air Force Base for basic. I think everybody goes there for basic, don't they?
That's the only, as far as I know, that unless it's changed.
Anything that rings out in your head that you remember, boom, that happened in basic training.
Yeah, actually, before I even got to basic training, apparently at that time they took an airplane and flew it down the East Coast, came through Atlanta, and came across to go to San Antonio, which is where Lackland is. Well, we got stuck in some very serious thunderstorms, and they had to divert us to Houston. So we sat in Houston most of the night and got into basic training basically 3/4 of a day late, which we didn't get any sleep.
Yeah.
Now, both of you guys have been through the first day of basic training, which is bad enough. Now, imagine doing that with no sleep. Yeah. And half the guys were hungover because they had been out partying the night before. So, yeah. So, yeah, that was kind of a mess. And then Air Force Basic it's not real physical, I'll put it that way. Okay. And it's only 8 weeks. It was 8 weeks when I was in it. Yes, we did PT all the time. That was easy for me because I had been playing soccer. I was in really good shape. And to me, it's more of the mind game of break you down, build you back up. Okay. The discipline part of it, again, from soccer was not that big of a deal to me, other than the intensity of it. You know, while I've had coaches yell at me and call me all kinds of crazy names, I've never had any of them doing it right here. Okay. So it's the intensity of it was completely different. That caught me off guard. Plus I was a couple years older. That was like 20, almost 21 when I went in. So I was a little bit older than some guys that had just, out of high school onto the plane to basic. Yeah. Other than that, the politics that was going on at the time too, in the Air Force, there was kind of two flights, yourself and your sister flight. So you were kind of in competition all the time.
So what's a flight? Is that a platoon?
Yeah, squad. Okay. It's like 30 guys or whatever. So you have a pair, so you're always kind of in competition with each other. Well, the training instructor for our sister flight was getting ready to retire, and I guess he had been a training instructor for a long time, and he had never had an honor flight, which was a graduating class. It was just like above average. So they wanted him on his final flight to be able to say that he had an honor flight. Most of the time when you go through basic training, you may have 1 or 2 training instructors the whole time you're there. I can't tell you how many we had. We must have had 10 in 8 weeks.
Oh, wow.
We never knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And they did, like I said, they did everything that they could to get this guy so he could have an honor flight. And that was fine. I didn't really care, but it was just the silly games that they went through to accomplish it. You know, it's just like, okay, that's when you kind of realize that basic was just, for us, it was more of a mind game, like I said, of tearing you down and building you back up in their mold. Some guys couldn't deal with it. Like I said, I didn't have any problems with it, but I was a little more used to discipline from playing soccer than a lot of people were. So, but basic to me was just, again, them bringing you down to their level and building you back up in their image, because they want you to be what they want, not what you want, what they want. And once you realize that and you can deal with it, it's, again, it's more a mindset for the Air Force than it is a lot of physical stuff. Yeah, we had, like I said, we did PT every day. We did marching, you know, we did all of that stuff. Just, again, not to the intensity that you guys do.
So what is an E6 in the Air Force? Is that a
That's a master sergeant, I believe.
Is it really?
E6, no, E6 staff, tech sergeant.
See, because in World War II, my grandfather was a tech sergeant, and he had a T on top of his rank, right? And he worked at he was in the Air Force, but he was in France working at a MASH unit.
Right.
When the bloodied come in, they'd stop all the bleeding and get you ready for surgery and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he was over there, and he was on a surgical team. And back then, you know, the prima donna doctors, as they would say, would do the surgery, and then they'd take their gloves off, and they said, irrigate him out and sew him back up and do all this other stuff. So the tech sergeants were doing that. And after a while, he got sent somewhere, and he was actually doing surgeries in the combat area because the training that he received. He was a nurse, a surgical nurse, before he got drafted. Right. And then he got drafted, and he went to medical school, wherever they had that at. I don't know. And then he went over to Europe, and he was in England for the longest time until they could put a hospital over in France to take care of all the wounded from D-Day. And there were tons of them. And that's where he got his surgical know-how, because the people they couldn't keep up with it. So if you were a tech sergeant or any kind of medic, you were doing because you see it in the movie, you go, wow. And you're in the military, you go, I don't know medics that did things like that. Yeah. And probably not, they aren't allowed to do that. But back then, when you have hundreds of thousands of people dying all around you, that was necessary. So I did remember his rank, and he had the T on top of his thing for tech sergeant or whatever.
Tech sergeant, yeah. It's funny you talk about it. When I say my mom and my aunt were flight nurses, okay, same scenario. You have the MASH hospital. They patch them up, do what, meatball surgery they can. Yeah. And then they send them to the hospital, and then they get evac'd.
Right.
My mom and my aunt were on those planes that evac those people from those MASH units back to England.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she could tell you some stories. Absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, and I think that's a big point too, kind of like what Mike was saying, was you get trained and you're allowed to do certain things until you're in that, combat theater or hostile environment where if you have the ability to do it, you do it. If that means saving that, your battle buddy to your left or right, then you're going to perform it. And it even came with, like, say, driving vehicles and stuff. We ran into a couple scuffles while I was deployed because, well, you're not licensed to run that. we're in a whole nother country. Like, what are you gonna like?
Yeah.
I can operate it. We're gonna do it. Like,
Yeah.
once you went overseas, some of those rules of licensing and who was certified to do this and that could kind of go to the wayside, as long as somebody was competent enough to do it.
Yeah, we were the same way. You did what you needed to do, no matter what the situation or what it took. So
Yeah, I think the only thing that we had, we carried a little box of, they're called OBs. They're for women. Women in the chat know what they are. And we carried a box of those in our first aid pouches. And actually the training that we had gotten, I said, so why are we carrying these? And the guy said, the guy was giving the class, the last thing you want to do is you take one of those and you shove it in the bullet hole.
yep.
All right. They'll clot it. Now what they've got, they've got this stuff, it's in a can like this big, and it has one of those tips, kind of like WD-40 has, and you stick it in there, you shove that in the hole, you push the can, and it closes the wound up. It's almost like that foam installation
Spray
stuff.
foam. Exactly.
And it just fills it up to help put pressure.
See, we had the quick clot powder.
Yeah.
You know, where you poured the powder on the okay, it's Marines. You got to try everything once, right?
Yeah.
Don't try it if you don't need it, because it burns and it hurts and it's not a good plan.
Yeah.
But we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Severe things for severe conditions, you know. It's like you got to get it stopped. Doesn't matter if it feels good or not.
There you
go. Well, I see a couple more people popped in. We got Hummingbird, Christine, Miss Gillen Farms. And who else popped in? There was somebody else I just seen. Oh, Glenda from Grace and Fire has made it in.
Yep, that's right, Neil. Just keep it working. All right. Let's see.
No, Ginger, we didn't light it on fire like Rambo did. And I'm sure there was Marines ready to try it. Like, I tell you, you want something experimented, you just find the nearest Marine. They're going to experiment for it.
Where he pulled the lead out and put the gunpowder on there and lit it on fire?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll kill you too.
Yeah.
Right.
One of those things is good in theory, but bad in practice.
Yeah.
Not everything you guys watch on TV should be practiced. That's what boot camp for Marines should have been. Was like everything you watched on TV, don't do that.
Yeah.
Yep. Ginger's saying salute to my dad, Elmer Griffin, Airman 3rd class from 55 to 59. There you go. Salute.
So Ralph, we know you were in the Air Force. You served your 8 years. What did you do while you were in? Like, and I know we had talked about this a little before. Most of us call it an MOS. You guys have a different title for your job description.
Yeah, again, the Air Force got to be a little bit different. They use what's called an AFSC, Air Force Specialty Code or something like that. So same thing. It's a number that equates to a job. When I went in as what is a 99125. Now, everybody that's here that's been in the Air Force starts with a 9. What is that? Okay, anything that starts with a 9 is what's called a routing identifier, and it basically is for special jobs. Special jobs can be anything from what I did, and I'll tell you about that in a second, to the band. Okay, the band in the Air Force, their MOS or their AFSC starts with a 9 because it's specialty duty. I worked for an organization called AFTAC. AFTAC, what we did, Air Force Technical Application Center. What we did was we monitored nuclear testing throughout the world. So back then there were test sites and everybody had these places where they would test their nuclear bombs, including us. So, and what we did was no different than the technology that the Russians and everybody else had. Nothing out of the ordinary. So the way that we monitored this was there's a couple different ways. What the section that I was in for the most part was seismic, earthquakes. When you set off a nuke underneath the ground, it shakes the earth just like an earthquake does. A little bit different signature on what the waveform looks like. I'm sure everybody's seen news reports on earthquakes and stuff. You see the little round white drums with the little squigglies on it and stuff. Well, we had those, but that was like we didn't use those. That was like our backup to our backup to our backup.
Yeah.
We had an array of sensors buried in the ground, and we had all these little signals brought back into our detachment, and we did all kinds of neat stuff with them and created direction finding and stuff like that. So we could tell basically where somebody had set off a bomb, how big it was, how deep it was, all kinds of neat stuff about the bomb that I can't talk about. But it was, at that time, it was a classified thing. Parts of it have been declassified since then. I don't know what I can say and can't say. But basically, we used seismicity to track nuclear testing. There's other ways you can do it. Hydroacoustic, which was O, which makes sense. Ocean, I don't know why they got B for seismicity or geology or anything, but that's just what they used. They've also, that AFSC has changed a couple of times. It changed right after I went in from 99125 to 99103 and 99105, and I'll explain that in a second. Now it's 9S100 if anybody wants to look it up. Okay, has pretty high requirements to get in. It's a really good field. If you want to learn about electronics and stuff like that, it's a really good field to get into. So when they split the AFSCs into 03 and 05, my school, okay, in the Air Force, you go basic training, and then you go to tech school, which I think you guys is what you call your AT school. So we don't go to like an extra after basic training, more actual military training. You go right from basic training. Most guys take a couple of weeks of leave, and then they go right to their tech school. So my tech school was at Lowry Air Force Base in Denver, Colorado. Nice place to go. It's not there any longer. The base got closed during base realignment. And my tech school was a year, because when I went in as a 2-5, my class was both the maintenance class and the operations class. So everybody that went before me, you went through a combined class, and whatever you went to, if it was an operations slot, you went in operations and did that. You could move from an operations slot to your next assignment being in a maintenance slot, because you were dual trained. The maintenance part of it was much longer, took longer to learn than the operations part of it. So they split it up. I got stuck. My first assignment was an operations slot, so I got stuck being an operator. They basically wasted a whole bunch of training on me, making me an operator instead of making me a maintenance guy. But they couldn't take my whole class and make us all maintenance techs, because there weren't that many slots at the time. Just one of those things that fell out the way it was. So now, if you go through the 9S100 class, that is, I don't know what they've done with the numbers, the kicker numbers on the end, like the 3 and the 5. I don't know what they do now. From what I can tell, the 9S100 is the operator class, and that is like a 3-month class. Plus, I don't think it's as involved as when I went through it. I don't know how much actual data analysis is done out in the field now. So again, we're talking, I was in 40 years ago. It's very different from the way that when I did it. I'm sure. I don't really know, but I just, knowing technology and how we use technology then, I'm sure it's quite different now. But that's basically what I did. So, and you can look up AFTAC. There's, some links. It's not completely hidden from everybody. You can find links for it. Their headquarters is at Patrick Air Force Base. Well, I think it's Patrick Air Force or Space Station now, Space Base or whatever. I think it's a Space Base now. but their headquarters is there. They built a brand new building from the building that I worked in. So I think there was asbestos in that building, parts of it, but
Back then, I think there was asbestos in everything.
yeah, and that building had been there for quite some time too. So.
Yeah.
But it was right. Our work building was right on the beach. It was right across A1A from the beach in Cocoa Beach. So that's where Patrick is.
So, hey, let's say hello to Glenda, Grace and Fire, and Sir Grace is listening. Thunderstick, Bowen, Thunderstick Homestead Ministries in the house. I want to thank him for coming in here.
Hoorah, shout out to Devil Dog.
Devil Dog. Let's see, I think Devil Dog. Yeah, and we want to thank you guys for coming in. So you talked about your job and stuff like that. So I know when I was working, I worked at the Chemical Defense Training Facility. We had international inspectors come in and do a site survey and a compliance by the treaties, international treaties, and stuff like that. Did that place you work for, is that what they did also, or it was just the seismic?
No, that was part of what they did too, was to collect particulate matter. If you look at AFTAC's mission, there's three test ban treaties that is their main function to watch.
Right.
There was one in 63, 64, and I want to say 67. Basically between the three of them, they say no above ground testing. So you can't just set your bomb up on top of the ground and set it off, because again, you have radiation going everywhere. No testing over design yield of 150 KT, 150 kiloton, which is pretty big.
Yeah.
And I've forgotten what the other one is. No venting. So if you test your bomb underneath the ground, nothing can come out of the hole. No air, nothing can vent out into the air. So when I talk about particulate matter, which is what you were talking about, that was part of our job too, was to go, like when somebody would test, we would fly an airplane over and collect air samples and make sure that nothing was emitted into the air.
Nuke provides gamma radiation, right?
All kinds of stuff.
And fallout and stuff like that.
Yep.
Well, whatever it picks up from the ground and distributes becomes
it becomes radioactive. So
yeah. Okay.
And
so
then
we
there's
covered
also,
a couple of questions.
Also, when you set off a nuke, you also get an EMP, which is electromagnetic pulse. Yeah. And that was another way in which we watch things too. So
yeah, you can shut down a whole country with an EMP. Yeah. That would devastate the United States.
That would devastate everybody now.
Right.
And if you had if you had your phone shut off, it wouldn't matter, because when you turned it back on, it couldn't pick any signal up.
Work anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, it would all be gone.
Yeah.
So you're talking about, like, with you dealing with like the testing and control of testing of, and it's kind of crazy. We talk about this military life, right? And there's tons of service members out there. I don't even want to throw a number because I know I'd be wrong. And we all know it's not my first day here. I'm not good at math. But one of the cool factors of coming here is not too far from where we're at now at my father-in-law's, is a place called Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And I didn't think nothing of it other than, like, the first thing, honestly, when they said, oh, it's Oak Ridge, Tennessee, cool. My brain went to the Oak Ridge Boys. Like, that's where I'm like, oh, is that where they got the name of their band? Like, I didn't know any different. Well, then you go over there and they've got I don't know, I haven't been able to go into the museum yet. They say there's one. I've seen the sign. But Oak Ridge is actually where And when you drive around that city right now, you actually see the remnants that it used to be a military installation. They developed that city. It was a base, very top secret of what was going on around there, because that's actually where they developed the uh, atomic bombs that they
Yep.
dropped on Hiroshima and stuff, was right in Oak Ridge. And I'm like, whatever, BS. And then so my wife drove me over there, and no, it was legit. Like it's
Yep.
and you could still see the remnants. Like we just seen this the other day and it blew my mind. So what was originally probably, single barracks, right? Would have been the single soldier barracks.
Right.
They're now apartments, but they look like they're still the like old barracks. Like they didn't change the exterior at all. But they've obviously renovated the insides, I would hope, and people aren't just living in barracks rooms. Maybe they are. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
hey, so we talked about a couple of things. You covered some questions we had, but you already explained those. Tell us about your duty stations and which one of those was your favorite one. Now I know which one you're going to say.
You think?
I'm going to wait and listen to you.
Okay, so Lackland Basic, Denver, Colorado for tech school for just under a year. Loved Denver. Denver was really pretty. Nice skiing, all that good stuff. 5,000 feet up. So from there, I go to Pinedale, Wyoming, which is out in the absolute middle of nowhere. If anybody has ever been or knows where Jackson Hole is, it's on the way to Jackson Hole. It's like 70 miles south of Jackson Hole, so 135 miles south of Yellowstone National Park, 7,000 feet up in the mountains, an outdoorsman's paradise. Absolutely. Only problem is I don't hunt or fish. So it's like, okay, what am I going to do here? Okay, I bought a 4-wheel drive vehicle and I bought a camera and I learned to 4-wheel drive and I learned to take pictures. That's one thing you'll hear as I go through my assignments is even if I didn't really like, but I really didn't have a bad assignment. If I didn't like where I was going or I didn't know what I was going to do, like when I found out I was going to Pinedale, I'm like, what am I going to do there for a year and a half of nothingness out in the cold mountains? So I figured out something to do. And I enjoyed my time there. Like I said, we were 7,000 feet up in the mountains. It was absolutely gorgeous. You can go up to Yellowstone National Park whenever I wanted to, go up to Jackson Hole to go skiing. I didn't ski very much because of my knees. I learned how to cross country ski. So that was fun. Very frustrating from a guy from Georgia when you have 20 feet of snow and it's all powder and you can't have a snowball fight. You can't even make a snowball. It won't stick
because
together.
there's no humidity up there.
Yeah, no humidity whatsoever. We didn't even have air conditioning.
Yeah.
So this was one of, I think, 10 what was considered a remote site within the continental United States. So not only did I get my first assignment out of the way, I got a remote tour done and something within the States. And then from there, I was there for a year and a half. Like I said, loved it the whole time I was there. From there, I go to Patrick Air Force Base in Florida. I'm living on the beach.
Tell them where it's at.
What?
Tell them where the air base is at in Florida.
It's in Cocoa Beach. It's on the beach. Like I said, our building was across A1A from the beach.
See?
Base house, the dormitory was on the main part of the beach. The main gate of the beach, or the main gate of Patrick Air Force Base, is across the street, across A1A.
See,
from the beach.
Air Force knows how to pick it. Okay.
Yeah.
I was in Polk and he was on Cocoa Beach.
Right.
So it's just, Patrick Air Force Base is like 13 miles south of Cape Canaveral, if that helps people place where it is. And it's literally on a little spit of land between the mainland and the ocean. It's actually, the ocean is on one side and the Banana River is on the other. If you're driving south on A1A, when you first drive on to where the base is, there's one section where you can look on either side of the road, and one side you can see the ocean on one side and you can see the Banana River on the other side. It's that close. So I was there for a year and a half. I was in the same organization this whole time. I was not supposed to be going anywhere. I had just changed from doing the seismic stuff to doing the EMP side of the stuff. I was supposed to be where they had sent me to training at Harris Corporation to do all this stuff. I was supposed to be on a frozen assignment. The only problem was my frozen assignment paperwork went in the day after I got my orders to go to Turkey. So again, one of those things in the military, it's not just the Air Force, you know, it's like this. So we discussed, and it's like, okay, again, you wasted some training on me, but I'll know how to do it when I get back. So I got sent to Ankara, Turkey, which again, it's like, you might as well be sending me to Mars. I know nothing about Turkey or anything else. And it was funny. Everybody that had not been there told me how much I was going to hate it. And the one guy from our unit that had been there and had been there when our detachment was closed down, so he really didn't have a whole lot to do, said, don't listen to anybody else. You'll probably like it. Knowing you, you'll probably like it. He said, you're the type of guy who tries to make good things out of, you know, bad situations, or, you know, if you don't like what you're going on, you just try to always make the best of it. So again, you know, military, I don't have any choice, so I have to go. So I go, and very, very different. When I first got there, it was right after the military had taken over the government. So everything was like shut down. The guys on base woke up the day that the military took over the government. They woke up and there was 39 Turkish tanks parked in front of our base, not against us, to protect us.
Yeah.
And it was actually good for the country, because Turkey's always had a lot of problems with terrorists and all kinds of just crazy stuff going on over there. And it actually did a lot of good. When I first got there, there was a midnight to 5 o'clock in the morning curfew. And I mean, there was no exceptions. We were not out on the street at that time.
Right.
Period. No questions asked. In the 2 years that I was there, that completely disappeared. And we all said, just, you know, from being in and around town all the time, that in the time that we were there, that the people went from like being out on the street with your head down, just trudging, going about your business, to being completely free and open and going out and partying, you know, going to nightclubs and speaking on the street and everything. So while I'm not a big fan of military dictatorships, that at the particular moment in time did a lot of good. So plus, while I was there, I met my wife. So that kind of had a little bit to do with it too. But and then from there, that's why I was there for 2 years. I just went over again, meeting somebody, even an American girl on base or anything, and getting married. And, you know, I'm basically a single guy living on the beach in Florida, and that's what I'm going to come back to, you know. That's a good deal. That's good for me. So meeting anybody, American, Turkish, British, otherwise anything else was like the furthest thing from my mind. But that just shows you what God's plan sometimes has for you. So I go over, and it's like, it's cool. I like it. It's not bad. You know, it's just, when, again, I was in Ankara, which is a huge, you know, it's the capital city. It's where all the embassies are. So there's all kinds of stuff going on. And going downtown Ankara was just like going downtown Atlanta. There's sections of Atlanta that I don't go into. There's sections of Ankara that, as an American, I didn't go into. If I stayed in the major shopping districts, you know, the major hotel districts, restaurant districts, I had no problems.
Yeah.
Plus, the language is pretty easy to pick up. It's pretty much phonetic, so you can pick it up pretty much, you know, enough to get by left, right, count 1 to 10. You know, you pick that up real quick, because you get in a taxi and you tell them, you know, that's another thing. You barter for everything in there. You get in a taxi and you say, I want to go here, and he'll tell you how much, and you say nope, because as soon as he knows you're an American, the price doubles. So you just cut it in half to start with.
Yeah.
And then you barter before you even leave. And I've actually gotten out of taxis before and gotten in the one behind him and come to a price. And
Yeah.
once you learn to do it, it's kind of fun. First few times you always get taken. Same thing when you go out to shop, nothing has prices on it. You have to ask what it is. And again, they see you're an American and it goes up. So you learn real fast that you go back to base. Oh, look, man, I got this and it was only this much. And then everybody laughs at you going, ha, you paid twice as much as you should have for that. It's anybody that's in a foreign country that deals with bartering, it's kind of an art, and you learn to do it, and it actually becomes kind of fun. So from Turkey, I went back to Patrick Air Force Base, and then I got out.
Cocoa Beach. Cocoa Beach.
Yes.
Yeah, he keeps trying to.
So, like I said when I was talking about Pinedale, I really did not have any what I considered bad assignments. You know, I didn't get sent to Minot, North Dakota, or any of the notoriously bad places that the Air Force does have some really nasty places you can go. So it's not like everything is easy in the Air Force. And it's funny, you mentioned my chair. If you could see what the seat of this chair looks like, you wouldn't say that. This chair is about beat to death.
Oh, you heard that?
I did, yeah. I just thought that was funny. I was like, yeah, the back of it looks wonderful and it is comfortable, but this chair is about 8 years old and I'm actually sitting on a towel because the bottom of it's all shredded.
Well, I'll tell you something. I did a 4-month tour in Turkey during Operation Provide Comfort. And I told the story about when they were gassing the Kurds and they came up into the mountains and stuff like that. But we flew on Black Hawks from Germany to Italy, from Italy to Turkey,
right?
With external pods on the Black Hawks. And when we got there, we landed in Incirlik.
Right.
They told us when we got off our briefings, do not drink anything there. If you drink water, make sure it goes crack, crack, crack.
Yep.
Don't drink anything. And we've been on that bird for, I don't know how many hours, 8-hour flight on that last leg. And we landed there and there was this Turkish officer at the air base. We went inside and he goes, oh, do you want some coffee? And I said, yeah. And I didn't see where he got the coffee from. And it was like lukewarm and really thick. Oh my God. And so we left there about 4 hours later. We went to a tactical base that the Brits set up called Batman Base. And we got there and around 1:30 in the morning, the dysentery set in. And I lost 29 pounds in like 16 days.
Yep.
Okay. And that's what I remember about Turkey.
I had to, like I said, other than meeting my wife there, I had a really good time there.
Yeah.
I'm like I said, I'm always open for things. I have a rule about food. You just have to tell me what I'm putting in my mouth. I'll usually try anything once. Certain anatomy parts don't go in my mouth, like Rocky Mountain oysters. Sorry. No.
Yeah.
But, sheep brains, I've had that. I've had goat stomach soup there, and that sounds disgusting. But once you know how they make it, it's not that bad. It's more like a broth than anything else. But, it's just, so I'm always open for things. And talk about culture shock, again, just from being in the States and, hearing the prayer 5 times a day.
Yeah.
When I was there in opera, they couldn't, during the winter, they couldn't produce enough electricity for everybody. So we had scheduled power outages. There'd be 2 hours during the day and an hour at night. And it would, they would come on the news, the local news, and say, okay, you live in this area of town, your electricity, they would, tell you when it was going to be out. And I will give them credit. They were really good about, if it was going to be out from 10 to noon, it would be out from 10 to noon. Yeah. And it was just one of those things you learn to work around it. It's just the way people lived every day, so it's like, that was one of the things I liked about the military versus going and visiting somebody or somewhere. When you're in the military and you live somewhere, you learn to live like the people there live.
Yeah.
And you learn a lot about people when you have to do that.
Except if you're in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny because like I've heard, you know, I hear Ralph talk about being stationed overseas, and I think just about everybody that I've met that has served at some point they had a stint that they got to serve overseas.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, well, just leave the crane eater out of this whole conversation, because the only time I went overseas was not on vacation trips, you know, with 3 deployments. And I actually did spend some time in Turkey, though.
Yeah.
Didn't know if I was going to leave it.
Yeah.
Had to go home from a deployment on emergency leave. Came home while I was flying back. I have my orders. Well, for whatever reason, when I flew through Turkey the first time, everything was good to go. When I was coming back from the States, I got into Turkey, and they're like, well, you don't have a passport. I'm like, no, I'm a United States Marine. I don't need a passport.
Came in on orders, yeah.
Here's my orders. And so they took the orders. Of course, they pulled me off. I got to go sit in a security room now.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there waiting, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, they're brought me a couple bottles of water, but not telling me anything of why I can't go. Well, finally, they got a supervisor that could speak a little bit better English. And he came in and he's like, well, this is an original signature. And I was like, well, I don't care. He's like, well, it needs to be original signature. I said, well, you find the fella that signed that the first time and get him to sign it. Like, I don't even know who that guy is. He's some bigwig somewhere else that signed my orders, but I just flew to the United States 14 days ago and I'm coming back now. And he's like, well, we need original signature. And I'm like, you're not going to get it. Like, what do you want me to do? And I'm sitting here and I finally, it hit my brain. Hey, there's got to be an embassy. I don't know if there is or not, but that seemed to work before for other people that said, hey, if you ever get in trouble in a foreign country, your U.S. government, get a hold of the embassy. So I just started, hey, I need somebody from the U.S. embassy here. Bring somebody from the embassy. Like, we're going to straighten this out. I can't just call my people back in Afghanistan. And the one stateside were clueless. They were like, well, I don't know. They did it from Afghanistan. So
I'd have told them, send me back to the United States. Then let them
put me on the plane back to the States. I'm good there.
That was the thing, is the guy was telling me that, you know, because that was almost an option at one point. I'm like, fine, just ship me back. And they're like, no, you're not leaving here. Like, this room. And all I could think through my brain was like, what was that movie? Tom Hanks got stuck in the airport.
Yeah.
You know, Terminal. Like, how many months am I going to have to live in a friggin' airport in Turkey? Yeah. You know, like, what's going to happen? And it was about 2 hours, which luckily it was a long layover in Turkey, which initially I was like, hey, I'm about to have a good time.
Yeah.
And no, that wasn't the case. I sat the whole time. I think it was about 4 or 5 hours total. I sat in the security room before, like, I think I had 10 minutes when they let me out to get to that next flight to finish getting over. It just, So I've not had those have to learn culture. And part of me, just because my brain doesn't, you know, like, it makes sense, you know, when you're like, oh, the Turkish language, easy to pick up. Of course, you're in the Air Force. You're already smart. Like, what am I supposed to do munching on my crayon? And by the way, they don't say Crayola. They got some other language written on them in other countries. So you don't know if they're safe or not. It makes it definitely difficult.
I mean, it is when you go to a foreign country to live, at the beginning, it is a little bit intimidating.
Yeah.
Okay. So you tend to stick with, okay, who's speaking English to me? And then after you get there and you go, after, you know, for me, every time I went to a foreign country, I'm like, you're a little bit apprehensive, but then in about a week or two, you just go, what the frick? Okay, I don't speak the language. That's okay. But people are people. And this is exactly. You just got to get used to the way things are done there.
Yep.
Nothing worse in the world than to go to a country and then you see other Americans, all they do is complain in the United States. And dude, you're not in the United States no more. You do know that there's places outside of the US, but they always tend to say, well, it's not like this in America. It ain't like this in America. So it's just like when you go to Germany, everything's smaller.
Yep.
Refrigerators are smaller. Stoves are smaller. You can't get a 25-pound turkey in a German oven. There ain't no way unless you quarter it up and stuff like that, right? And Korea is the same way. They got these little small refrigerators. Their custom is you go shopping every single day for your meals. That's just the custom there. Not us.
That's the way Turkey was when I was there. You had your local shop.
We shop for the month. You know what I mean? In the States, because we can store that kind of stuff. Because electricity is more expensive over there. I mean, they don't have the big dams and all that kind of stuff and things like that in other countries. You just have to, you have to adapt and overcome. Yeah. And once you do that and accept, you have so much fun in foreign countries.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was a guy in Turkey with us, one of our guys, believe it or not. This guy complained the whole year and a half he was there.
Yeah.
And he would not leave the base. He wouldn't even, we very rarely went downtown by yourself. You always took 3 or 4 to 5 guys with you, little group, safety in numbers.
Yeah.
He wouldn't even go with us then. And he complained the whole time he was there. And that's the type of guy that when he comes back to the States and comes back to Patrick, and somebody there is going to end up going to Turkey, he's going to badmouth it the whole time when all he did was sit on base and make himself miserable. I went out and met a Turkish woman while I was there. Not that I was planning on it. She just happened to hang out with one of the guys that got there. He was married and had kids. So he had a Turkish babysitter. And my wife hung out at this lady's house. They were real good friends. And I went with Tom down there one time to pick up his kids, and that's where we met. We were all just as a group of people going out that night to eat, and that's where I met my wife. So literally, you never know. But it's just people are people everywhere. It doesn't matter where they live. Everybody just wants to take care of their family and be comfortable. It doesn't matter what country you live in. People are universal all throughout the world. It's just the way people are. And people deal with what they deal with wherever
that's a good story.
Be like that.
That's a good story about meeting your wife. I met my first wife in a bar. Okay. And why she stuck around, because I was a drunken fool. And she goes, "Oh, that's very attractive." I don't know. I was the ugly American. The commercials is "Don't be that guy." I was that guy.
I think everybody is at some point in time. Well, it's funny because when I first met my wife, she didn't speak very much. She could understand. She's still this way. She can understand more than she can speak. But I couldn't speak Turkish, and she couldn't really speak English. But what made us realize there was something there was whenever we spoke to each other, we kind of understood what we were saying.
All right.
Even though we didn't really understand, we just kind of. Now we don't understand each other at all. So.
Hey, we got Merns Pacquiao's in here from the Philippines. Hello, my friend. Glad you came in. We've got Gypsy Trails.
Yep, Randall, Gypsy Trails made it in. Good to see you, brother.
He was talking about the air base over in Hawaii. What do you say? Best air base was Blue Alahi in Hawaii. He said, "I'm pretty sure it's gone now." And Grayson Fires said Anderson Air Force Base in Guam. And Terry and I got to visit there. Got to eat lunch there, which the PX on there. And we said, "Hey, wouldn't it be nice to be stationed here in Guam? It's 82 degrees all year round."
All year long. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and it never changes. And then they got on one end's Anderson, where they got the blackbirds and stuff like that. And the only time the blackbirds leave there is when they take off and they fly the DMZ in South Korea and North Korea, and then they fly back for breakfast. and then they do it again at lunch, and then they do it again for dinner time. Okay, taking their pictures, and because those are surveillance birds.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're in Anderson, and we got to go there.
Yeah,
I also had friends that went to Hickman, to Elmendorf, and yeah, I know where Elmendorf is. I don't know where Hickman is.
I don't remember where Hickman is either.
And she says we lived in some cool places. I can't complain. DM Air Force Base, do not move. Oh, is that what that means? Do not move Air Force Base was my favorite. I don't know what that is. DM. Let's see.
Yeah, most Air Force bases were pretty decent. And it's funny, when I went through basic training, I was in the middle of change. So they had some new barracks and they had some old barracks, the old World War II barracks. That's what I got to sleep in, was one of the old barracks. It probably had, I don't know, maybe 5,000 coats of paint on it.
Yeah.
If those things had ever caught on fire, they would have just burned to the ground in a second. But yeah, we were in the old barracks with the old gray cots and stuff. And yes, after getting no sleep and them letting us sleep for maybe an hour or so the TI comes in and 2 metal garbage can lids down the center aisle, banging off of the metal posts on the beds. Get up, started with that routine.
So Devil Dog went to school at Naval Air Station Millington, Tennessee.
Yep, one of the places.
Oh, to A school. Yeah.
Yeah, A school.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was offered. I applied for a job there with your, what is it called? Your MWR, the Marine.
Morale, welfare, and recreation.
Yeah.
Morale, warfare. Yeah.
But
that was one of my extra duties when I was in Turkey. I was
because
MWR officer.
Yeah, but what they wanted, it was a higher pay grade than I was in, and they wanted to pay me $25,000 less. I said, "You're crazy." Then I looked at their civilian pay scale compared to the Army, and it's not even close to the same.
Yeah. So you were asking me what my favorite station was. I really do not have one. I would probably have to say Turkey, just because that's where I met my wife.
That's because you have to say that.
Yeah, but she's not sitting here, so I can safely say that I really don't have a favorite. I really don't, because they were each unique in their own way. And like I said, I'm pretty open with stuff, and I had a good time everywhere I went. I'm sure there's plenty of people that have gone to some really nasty stations and just didn't have a good time there, and were bad people. I'm not saying everybody I worked with was a really good person to work with. There was a couple guys over in Turkey that I tolerated. I put up with them with the shift turnovers, but after that, I didn't hang around them or anything like that. So, but that's really the only place there was a couple people I didn't care for. But all the people when I was at headquarters were really good. So
what made you? I think you kind of touched on it. What made you leave the Air Force?
Family.
I mean, everybody has a trigger point. Okay.
Yeah,
my trigger point was I wasn't having any fun anymore. Was going through a divorce. They wanted me to send me back over to Korea on an unaccompanied tour, and I had 2 teenage boys. And unaccompanied means they don't come over.
Yeah.
So that's what made me want to get out.
Yeah. Well, like I said before, with me, it was family. It was having a family and not wanting to have my kids travel around like I did when I was a kid and go to a bunch of different schools and have to make friends, because kids don't mean to be, but kids can be really cruel. Okay. Yeah. I got teased a lot when I was a kid. I won't say I was bullied. One place I lived in Georgia, and then we moved up north, and then we moved back down here. And the first junior high school that I went to when I was in Pennsylvania, both my sister and I would come home crying from school because we both had Southern accents, and these people thought that they were 10 times better than anybody anywhere near them. So we got bullied a lot. That's the only place we really got bullied. And we literally moved 30 miles down the road. My parents moved because we hated it so bad at school. We couldn't deal with school. And we moved 30 miles down the road, and it was like moving back to the South again. We moved from Westchester, Pennsylvania to Wilmington, Delaware. They're 30 miles apart. Right. Wilmington is just barely over the Delaware border into Delaware. And it was like we had moved back to the South again. Everybody was friendly. Everybody was nice. We're like, okay, this is really decent now. It's like, okay, that's the way it goes. But I didn't want my kids to have to deal with all of that stuff that I dealt with. Actually, I think in the long run, I think it made me a more rounded person because of all the stuff I dealt with, you know, some places you go and it was like, oh, you're the new kid, you know, and that was just it. You know, you were always the new kid. And if you remember back when you were in high school, sometimes the new kids weren't always treated very nicely. Yeah. You know, so we were always that new person getting used to everybody and people getting used to us. And I didn't want them to go through that. So it was time to get out. Plus, again, things changing in the military, things changing in AFTAC, the way they were doing things becoming more automated with the way they were doing things. So like when I was in Wyoming, since we were in the United States, we didn't actually analyze our data on site. It was sent to headquarters and it was part of what they analyzed at headquarters. When I was overseas, and yeah, I had to do actual data analysis where I sat and looked at squiggly lines for 8 hours plus 4 hours of the shift before me. So we were always going back and double checking and, you know, just looking at what I was doing. There was always other stuff going on. Like when I was overseas, we had to type up messages and send them off, crypto messages and send them off. So there was a whole bunch of other stuff that you did just besides your stuff. But back to the other question, just mainly family. And it was just time. I decided that, you know, if I'm going to do this, let's do it now. My initial enlistment was 4 years and I re-enlisted for 4 years because we had a really high re-enlistment bonus, SRB, selective re-enlistment bonus. Yeah. So in the military, if you have like a long tech school and they want to retain you, it doesn't cost as much to retain somebody as it does to retrain somebody. Right. They'll offer you a re-enlistment bonus. And mine at that time was a 4, which I think was 4 times your base pay. Mm-hmm. It was so funny when I went into the credit union on base and handed her the check that they had given me. She looked at it and she goes, what was this? Because it was a good sized check. When I handed it to her, she looked at it and she goes, what's this for? I said, I re-enlisted. And she got this just deadpan look on her face. And she looks at me, she goes, for how long? She thought I had re-enlisted for the rest of my life. It was the first big re-enlistment check bonus she'd ever seen. Yeah. I explained it to her. She goes, oh, okay. She goes, I've just never seen a check this big for a re-enlistment bonus. Yeah. So, yeah. But it was, it was time for me to either re-up again. And if I had re-upped for that third time, I probably would have stayed in for life. That's right. You were back in the days when the only bank on post was Amex, American Express banks. And we got paid in checks and we didn't have direct deposit back then. Yeah. Because when I went to basic, I had to go in front of a pay officer and they paid you in a parking lot, or if it was raining, inside the gym. Yep. So you had to report for pay and you got your money. They put it in an envelope. You folded it in half. You put it in your breast pocket on your right side. And then when you got back to formation, you had to turn it in. They sealed it with tape and they put it in the safe. And you got to use your money when they took you down each week to go to the PX to buy your toiletries and stuff like that. So, yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Military and money is funny. Basic training, when I got to basic training, everybody had to take all the money out of their wallet and write down the serial numbers of every bill in their wallet.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's dealt with that. I got, when I was in Turkey, when I first left, first time I went to Turkey, I had been married before, just wasn't going to work out. We both decided it wasn't going to work out. Just amicably went our ways. So that happened like right before change of station. So your pay always gets a little bit wacky when you change stations and everything else. So gone from being married and getting, you know, housing allowance, all that stuff you get when you're married, to being a single guy living on base. They screwed my paycheck. I got a paycheck for $0.00 one time, and I'm on separate rations. I have to pay for my meals in the chow hall.
Yeah.
I go down to the pay office and said, "What is going on here?" And they were like, "What?" So they started looking back. Well, we overpaid you for this. We didn't take this allowance off. And I said, "Well, you paid me that allowance for 3 months, and now you're taking it back all at one time." I said,
Yeah.
"I'm on separate rations. I have to pay for my meals in the chow hall." And they were like,
Oh.
"Yeah, they cut me advance
the
pay. They actually
government is
cut me
good
advance
about
pay."
The military, the government is good about that stuff.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
well, you should have known better. Dude, I'm a private. You gave me money. I'm going drinking. I thought I got a pay raise. I thought something happened. You know,
Well,
it's kind of
and
like
here's
the
one-
VA. The VA overpaid me for 9 years because I got divorced and then I got remarried. When I applied, someone said, "Well, you got to tell them you got married." So when Terry and I got married, I went and I told them, and they said, "Well, wait a minute, what happened in between there?" I forgot to tell them I got divorced, so they gave me it on a single and not married for the VA. Boy, they took that 9 years back quick, fast, and in a hurry.
Yeah.
There was no money coming in.
Yeah,
from the VA.
I might have noticed it if I hadn't had, you know, so many changes all at one time. I just figured, you know, when that next paycheck came out that was, you know, that's what it was going to be and that everything was straight. I had no idea.
Yeah.
If I'd only had one or two things change, I might have noticed, well, that, you know, that was a huge, you know, bigger change than that should have been. So, but yeah, no, it just kind of, the cracks.
I think the only time that I had seen, and luckily it didn't end up being a no pay dues. That's what we had called it. You know, you get hey, you're going to get paid 0.00. But when I retired, so the unit where I was at, the schoolhouse, the admin section, there was a couple of the admin that were in there at the time. Well, when you retire, you're authorized up to 60 days, I think it was, or something, 60 or 90 days of you know, PTAD, where you basically, you're going home, you're out, you're separated, you leave early. But you're still getting your active duty pay. And so I'm like, all right, I set it all up. I said, hey, I've got this many days of leave. I'm going to sell, you know, this month's worth of leave back.
Right.
But then I'm going to take the PTAD, you know, the temporary assignment that they, you know, which was me moving home. Well, I got home and all of a sudden, like, and they said that, hey, for the next like 6 months, you're going to see some differences in your bank account. They're going to add, they're going to take away, they're going to add, like, until they get everything settled out. And I'm like, well, that's kind of jacked. Like, I'm not the first guy to retire. Why are you figuring it out with my retirement?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I got a letter from headquarters Marine Corps at DFAS, right? Who handles all of our, the Department of Finance and Security. Is that what it is? Savings? I don't know. But they're the ones who, you know, they said, oh, well, we did an audit and you were on PTAD according to this, but your admin section said you sold all that leave back. And I had noticed an overly large check got deposited. And I'm like, okay, we're going to just move that to the side. We're going to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And I called back to the old S1 shop and I'm, you know, the admin shop. And I said, hey, why? We kind of figured the numbers. Why did this check come like 3 times larger than it should have? I'm not complaining. I can use the money, but I know how this works. You're going to give it to me. And then somebody's going to come around the corner and they're like, no. That's how we hook up our retirees is whatever you submitted as PTAD, your early, you know, retirement stuff. we ended up, we show it on the admin side that you sold those days instead of taking them as PTAC. And I'm like, so what's the chance? And they're like, well, nobody that we've done it for so far has been audited. And it was probably a couple, 2-3 months later. Guess what? I made that same phone call and I was like, and I called him everything but a white man. And I was like, what the hell? Well, then come to find out, I started reaching out to some other guys that retired around the same time that I did. Yeah. And I called them and I'm like, hey, did S1 do this? And they're like, yeah, we got the same thing. I said, stand by. They're about to, and every single one of them. And I actually called, it was my old chief warrant officer. I called him because he retired, I don't know, 3 or 4 months before I did. And he got hit on the same audit. So I ended up calling the commander, the colonel down there, and was like, you need to get a hold of S1 and let them know they need to stop doing this because they're screwing us. As much as they think they're hooking us up.
Right.
We're getting a huge check, and guess what? Now we're in debt, and we're getting, luckily they made it an allotment, so it wasn't a full no pay dues.
Right.
Yeah. But that was still, what was it, $100, $200 a month, something, until it was paid back.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like, what? How are you gonna? Oh yeah. So
I'm your Huckleberry.
Right, but my worry was kind of where you guys were going with it was. I knew a lot of guys that had done that. The government overpaid, and they don't waste their time.
No,
trying to now if they owe you money, don't hold your breath. You'll pass out because it's going to take months.
Sure.
But the minute you owe them money, they've got it right now.
Yeah. Even though the government has no money, they'll write you a check.
Right.
Yeah.
Checks are always good, right? It's always in the mail.
Yep.
Right.
So I know, like, guys, we all know we're not on a time limit. And one thing that I know that Mike and I focus a lot on, right? And this wasn't in our list of questions, but I'm throwing this one out here because I think it's a really good question, and kind of want your opinion on this. Was transitioning out. You did 8 years. You got out because you wanted to spend time. You didn't want your, family. Very legit reason of why to do that. What was the hardest part for you of transitioning after dealing with all, I guess we'll call it the secret squirrel stuff, right? While you're in the Air Force, then transitioning back to being a civilian. Like, what did that look like? Like, what was the hardest part of that transition?
I think the hardest part is taking the skill set that the military teaches you and applying it to civilian life, civilian job. The military is very specific in their training. They're going to teach you to do this. They're going to teach you to do this their way. And there is no other way to do it. It's this is the way it's done. Okay. And that's cool. But they don't teach you like variations of that. They don't teach it. You learn that on your own, but they don't teach variations. Now, civilian life is very much about variations. Everything is about options and doing this. But I think taking the skill set of what I had learned about computers and applying that to what I did in the Air Force, taking that and being able to apply it to a civilian job. That was the hardest thing for me. Again, the hard discipline, I had been through that with soccer before. So that was normal. And I went right back to soccer when I got out. So I played while I was in too. So that soccer has been something that has been part of my life up until I just can't participate anymore in the last few years. But the hardest part is, I think for anybody, not just for me, is to take that skill set that you learn in the military and be able to apply that to a civilian job. Now, I knew I had a good skill set in, basic computing stuff. And when I can't remember, I think I just saw an ad that Travelers had in the newspaper. I don't think I was using a recruiter at that time. And I just went and applied for the job. And my first job at Travelers was hanging tapes. It was not working that's IT, but again, IT is a huge field. IT covers a whole lot of different things. So actually my first job at Travelers was not really working with computers. It was at that time taking the big old giant round tapes and putting them on a tape drive and taking them off and putting them away. Basically manual labor, basically. But I knew that was my door to something else. And the guy that interviewed me, he knew of course I said I had been in the military. He could tell from my resume and my military experience. He said, you won't be in tape operations very long, because that's what I applied for, was tape operations. I was just looking for something that I could make a decent money at, and
Get your foot in the door.
had get my foot in the door, and they had, full benefits and everything from day one. So, that was important with a family. So that's how I got in the door. But he told me, he said, you won't be out there hanging tapes. You'll be in operations within a year. And I was. So, but I wasn't the only one. I mean, a lot of guys used tape operations, tape pool, as a door into the company.
Yeah.
And some people stayed in tape operations. Some people moved to computer operations, which is where I went into. And then I went from computer operations actually back into tape operations, because they moved computer operations back up to Hartford, which is where our main office is. All insurance main offices in Hartford, Connecticut, for everybody. And then they got rid of tape operations, and that's when I went up into hardware. When they got rid of tape operations altogether. Nobody uses round tape. Nobody uses magnetic tape anymore. It's actually disc units that look like it emulate.
Mine was the discipline from military life to civilian life. I got a job, called my boss, sir. He goes, stop calling me sir. I said, well, you're my boss. He goes, yeah. And I call him sir. Even though he said, call me Jimmy. I am not calling a grown ass man Jimmy. Okay. And I told him that it ain't going to happen. He goes, well, you make me uncomfortable calling me sir all the time.
Yeah. And we do that. We do that just, we do it by habit. Yeah,
but that was the hard part. It was the discipline side of the civilian sector.
And to relax the discipline.
Supervisor, when you become a supervisor on the civilian side, that was a hard thing to break. Being a leader of a bunch of civilians and being a leader of military people.
Yep.
Boy, that was hard.
Yes,
really hard.
Yeah, that is difficult.
The civilians don't want to hear the truth.
No, they don't.
No, they want it soft and easy, and
And I think the lack of accountability, like in the military, kind of like what Ralph was saying, was the military works on a very black and white, hey, here's a policy, here's a procedure. It's very black and white. You can find this is right, this is wrong. Very easy. You don't even have to think. I'd actually had seen, and it reminded me the other day, there was an old TV show. I mean, well, old for me, but not necessarily you guys. But Malcolm in the Middle, and the one son had joined the military, and there was a meme just come on Facebook the other day, and it showed it, and it was like he went from being this complete turd that couldn't do anything right, kind of what is his name? Pyle from Full Metal Jacket, just couldn't do anything. To all of a sudden, he was the most stellar recruit in his boot camp, and the drill sergeant sitting there like, "How did you do this?" And he summed it up the best, and he's like, "I found out that my problem was I was thinking." He goes, "I don't have to think. I just did it the way you said. Like I polished my boots, and he went through the whole procedure. And there's so much truth in being in the military in that. And even when we look at ourselves as we grew and developed as leaders, right? We became staff NCOs and senior leaders, even if it's just within our position or station that we're at, you're still in charge of somebody, right? There's always every day somebody else is coming in, so you're always going to be senior to somebody no matter what. And you have this track of I think it's a combination of the discipline and the consistency that that, hey, this is all I've got to do.
Yep.
But when you get into the civilian sector, and it's taken me a while, and it's taken a lot of conversations with other vets for me to really figure this out for myself, of there's too much gray area. There are too many options, and you can't hold people accountable for their actions when you're in the civilian world. Because if you do, you're offending them. And next thing you know, you're in HR, or you're getting told, hey, you're not allowed to talk to them that way. And I'm like, I'm their supervisor. They're supposed to listen. Well, you can't talk to them like they're Marines. Maybe that's the problem with your business or your operation. You should talk to them that way. Like, why are you scared of this employee? That doesn't make sense to me. And I think that's a big, from my observation, that is a big struggle of all veterans, no matter how long they really serve. Is trying to that transition back to the civilian world, because they want you to be normal. And we've talked about this before. Right? Once you've served, there's a new normal. It's not what all of society thinks is normal. You have a military normal, and then you have a non-military normal. They're not the same.
No, they're not. No, it's funny. At work, I'm usually a pretty quiet guy. When you get me talking in a thing like this, I will never shut up. It's because we've been on here for an hour and a half. So, but I'm usually a pretty quiet guy. I mean, you notice when I'm in chats, I'll come in and I'll say hi, and I'm a listener. I'm that quiet guy that sits at the end of the bar and people watches all night long while I sip on my beer. So it's just, I forgot what I was going to say. I completely forgot what I was going to say.
That's your civilian training. No.
No. That's my age. I did a complete brain fart there. Sorry, guys.
We tried to warn you about the squirrel moments, and then you made your background change like every so often. So
easy.
Focusing it's out the window now.
Hey, there's Canadian Family Life. Tiffany's in there.
I haven't done that in a while. Anyway, Neil's
saying good night to everybody.
And I know Randall, I think, said he jumped off.
Yeah.
I did see Max on.
Mac and Patty's in here,
Mac and Patty made
Mac Attack.
Another chair force.
Yeah. Great.
I was saying
it took years for us to relax on the fact that it's okay to be a minute early for an appointment and not 20 minutes early for an appointment.
I had that from soccer. You know, if soccer practice was at 6 o'clock, if you were there at 6, you were late. You know, if you weren't there at 5:45 on the field, you were late. So I already had that one before I even went in the military. No, I was talking about being the quiet person. Forgot again. Gosh, why can't that stay in my head?
See, that's why I drink. Because I drink.
Maybe I should. I had it, lost it. I had it again. I just lost it again. Oh, that's bad.
Hey, what was your experience with?
I got it again.
Oh, you found it?
Yeah, I remembered. I was talking about at work. I'm the quiet person. So at work, I was always the quiet person, you know, never really saying much of anything. And when I got into hardware and having to go to meetings and stuff like this, my bosses told me that I needed to be more vocal. And I warned them. I said, that's not a good idea. And they didn't understand. And I said, look, I'm a very blunt person. If I've got something to say, I'm going to say it. I said, you can thank my parents and you can especially thank the military. If I've got something to say, I don't pull punches.
Yeah.
They learned real quick that that was a really bad idea for me to be more vocal, because I didn't really care. If I didn't like what was going on, I would tell them. And then just it got to the point where they told me to, you know, hey, calm it down a little bit. But it's from the military thing about when you're in the military, it's like you pretty much know where you stand all the time. You know what you need to do.
Yeah.
You take care of it. If you take care of it in the correct manner that they want, you don't have any problems. And you know exactly where you stand at all times. There's no gray area like you were talking about. It's like, this is easy. This is really pretty easy. And for the like the kid in the television program, sometimes that's all young kids need is that direction, you know, to have somewhere to go, to know where they stand. Sometimes that's all they need. Is they don't need all that gray area. They need some direction, and the military can provide that for you.
Yeah,
it's
because
not
I
for
was raised
everybody.
by
No,
a
it's
single
not.
mom, raised by a single mom, and I needed that male figure to tell me I was a shitbird. Then I believed him. You know, mom said that for years, but she said it in a different way. I needed it straight in my face.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I truly did, you know, and that's the same thing. You can't go as a civilian from the military to civilian and tell an employee what they truly are.
Yep.
Because if you do tell them, I'm going to tell you flat blank, this is not the career for you. You are a horrible employee. Well, guess what? Big Mike found himself in the HR office, quick, fast, and in a hurry, getting my hand spanked because you don't tell people the truth like that. You need to be empathetic. You need to express yourself in a different way than telling them the direct truth. You need to break it to them slowly. Be calm. Okay. I said, what? And then try to fire somebody from the government as a civilian?
Yeah.
Holy smokes. It takes an act of Congress almost.
Yeah.
But
it can be very difficult.
That's the difference between the two. Hey, before we have to get out of here, how was your transition when you were getting out? Did you go through the VA? And if you did, how did that work for you? And are you using them today?
I did not have any dealings with the VA. I didn't have any, I had no disabilities that weren't there before I started in the military. My knee being bad was bad before I went in the military. It wasn't bad enough to keep me out of the military, but it was bad enough that it was there before I went in. That was the only thing that gave me any problem while I was in the military. So I didn't have to do any of that.
Oh, wow.
The only thing that I've dealt with is my VA loan for my house. So I don't, you know, again, I'm not retired from the military, so I don't have that part of it to deal with. I know I have death benefit and all that stuff. Again, I'm the old guy. I'm the old GI Bill type stuff. So I did use part of my GI Bill for some schooling and stuff. So I haven't really used VA because I haven't really needed to, because I don't, there's nothing I can do medically.
Well,
the problem with my neck. Yeah, the problem with my neck is from a motorcycle wreck. So
because you served, you need to check to see if you qualify for VA health care itself.
Right.
You know, but if you've got full medical and all that stuff through your company and stuff like that, I don't know what it's going to be like if and when you retire from your civilian job.
I'm already retired.
Then yeah, I would check it out.
I'm older than I look. Okay.
No, but I would check it out.
Well, and that's the other part too, is even not being retired. You know, like Mike said, we've talked about this in other videos, and honestly, I think, you know, you would be the prime example of this. Is like, well, I had some injuries when I went in. I did 8 years. I didn't have anything, and you've never used VA. You need to. Even if you have good healthcare coverage, whether it's, you know, through previous employment because you're covered under that, or it's through the, you know, Medicare, Medicaid program stuff, the VA can help supplement to that or be able to cover to where, you know, like, and I throw this out because like I was just having a conversation with my father-in-law, and he's not a veteran, but it's one of these things that we have to think about as we get older, right? And we get to that generation where, you know, hey, we're drawing our Social Security or we're drawing our insurance off our previous employer still or whatever. Is he's got pretty good health coverage insurance, you know, that he's paid into for years so that it can pay for it now. And even being, what is he, 73, and so he's also on the Medicaid, Medicare, whichever version he's on, plus he's got another insurance company. He still has to fork out, like he went in and instead of spending $70,000 is what the bill was, but he still had to pay $1,800
Right.
to cover those doctor bills, as to where if that's a procedure that they could somehow, some way, but you're registered with a VA,
Yeah.
that could be covered there. And guess what?
Could
That's
help cover the
zero out of
gap.
pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or they cover the gap of it. Like instead of that 1,800, you know, you're going to
Yeah,
put
I'll
what
have to
you
check.
can
I'll have to
remove.
check into it.
Yep.
It's just something I haven't really needed, but I probably should check into it because.
And that's what Tim over at Ridge Life, he didn't even know he qualified for it. And he watched, you know, and he
Right.
went in there and they said, yeah, here you go. And they goes, holy smokes. So
Wait,
there you go.
Yeah,
and he
there's
stayed on a
huge-
submarine underneath the polar cap.
Yeah.
So,
No, thanks.
yeah. Hey, hey, those are the questions we had for you tonight. Hey, I'm glad you contacted us. And if anybody out there that's listening to this or watching the replay, if you want to be a guest on the show and talk about your military career and what you experienced and stuff like that, we'd love to have you. Now, we don't want another Air Force guy. No. But but if you do, please contact us. Jason's email and my email is in the description down there, and some information about Ralph here is in there also, a brief synopsis if you want to read over that. But hey, we'd love to have you on the show. We'd love to talk to you about your career and what you experienced and stuff like that. So if you want to, please contact us and we will make that happen for you. I think it only took us, a couple of weeks to get this all together.
Yeah, not long.
And I'm sorry,
I'd sent
I
you an
had so
email
many
before,
questions.
and it was just, yeah,
Yeah.
it was easy to get set up,
And we don't,
like Mike said,
we don't do this as catch you off guard stuff. I did a lot of communications with Ralph, even showed him the questions because I didn't want no surprises or anything like that. And we will get this done, and we'd like to hear from you guys, and we'll do another one. Okay. So, hey, Ralph, I want to thank you for coming in. Thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you.
And
that's a question I always have trouble with is thank you for your service. I just don't know what to say to that. I'm not good with that question.
What do I say? You betcha.
Yeah, it's just
you're welcome.
Again.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard when you do it, but I do it more than other people do it. I'm quick about it. So yeah, I get it. But hey, no,
it was really easy to set this up and stuff. And I just want to say a couple little things real quick. I'm going to self-promote here for a minute. My background changing and all this stuff. I use OBS for this stuff. Like I said, I'm a computer nut. I build computers. I do all kinds of computer stuff. If anybody wants to learn about OBS, streaming, computers, DaVinci Resolve, anything like that, go to my channel, send me an email. We can get together. I'll work with you one-on-one. I'm a retired IT guy. I sit around the house and watch YouTube videos all day. So I have plenty of time to help people. And I did a lot of training at work. I did a lot of training when I was in the Air Force. I've been told I'm very good at training. I'm very patient with people, even though people consider me a computer.
He's very patient with teaching people stuff.
Yeah. Even though people consider me a computer expert, I don't consider myself an expert. There's a lot of people who know a lot more than I do, but I'm good at taking my time with you. I don't think there's any stupid questions. I'm not a hugely intelligent person. I learned all this stuff, so it's really not that hard. But that's all my self-promotion. You can see my webpage down there at the bottom. There's YouTube meetup event calendar on there. There's live calendars on there. There's some music videos on there and just some other stuff. So whatever.
All right.
I'm done.
No, absolutely. And Ralph, even for me, I might just see the comment from Dawn. No, and I'm not so great at the background communication. I'm a little slow, and of course, being out of town doesn't make things any easier. But yeah, was super excited as soon as we had seen the emails. Mike and I had talked about it. It was like, absolutely, this is why we're wanting to do the channel, is getting the information out. One, right? Things that we've learned, we've experienced, other people have told us about and experienced, to get it out to the veterans. But then also hearing the other veteran stories, because we've all served in a different way at a different time. Different services, different countries, all of these things. And there's nothing greater. I'll tell you that, we talked about a hard transition from being military to civilian. And I think it was, for me, I think the hardest part, and a lot of the veterans that I talk to, is this right here. The three of us, whether it's online, and of course now we have still 28 people in the chat, is just talking military. Didn't matter what branches we were in, doesn't matter whether we went overseas, we didn't go overseas, just the fact that we served, that commonality alone brings us all together as brothers and sisters. And the reason why we did it could all be totally different, but we did it. We served, and obviously we're talking, so we survived it. And just having those differences of stories, it makes you feel like you're still in that hole that was a void when you got out. This process, and that's what we try to promote more of this, because we know that every veteran that gets out, there's a hole. And how do you maybe not even fill that void, but how can you put something there? And it's through this stuff. So really appreciate you reaching out. Appreciate every one of you that have stuck out with us for almost 2 hours. Man.
I thought maybe if I came up, maybe I'll be the first up and more people will come up.
Yeah.
An Air Force guy up here. And that's the thing, we all kid each other about Chair Force and this, that, and jarheads and this, that, whatever. But we all have a common bond, and we all have a kindred friendship, because we all served in the military. It doesn't matter what branch we were in. And that kidding among the branches is just like brothers. If you have brothers or no family have brothers, those brothers fight with each other, and it's just the way that we are. And it's just, we all kid each other about it.
Let somebody else talk about your brothers and sisters.
That's it.
Not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Yep. You do that, you find out we're all one force. It doesn't matter.
That's right. All right, guys. Hey, thanks for coming in. Again, Ralph, thank you. Guys,
Cheers.
Hey, I'm kind of on the fence, because I don't know how I'm going to feel next Tuesday, because I go in Thursday for a full hip replacement. So I'm hoping, and we may just have an open mic, because I probably won't have the patience to get stuff set up and ready, or I don't know. But we may just have an open mic. But Terry will let you know if I'm feeling to the point where I can't sit here in a chair and do a live. I don't know, but we'll play it by ear for next week. So I just want everybody to know that. Or Jason, you can, if you want to do it, we can just have an open mic or do whatever. But guys, I thank everybody for coming in here. Remember, be kind to one another, help somebody in need, and always think of that. Ralph, we want to thank you for sharing your story with us. Everybody out there, thank you for coming in, and thank you for the salutes in the chat and your comments. We truly appreciate that. Battle Buddy?
I love it. You said it perfect. You got it. And we are looking forward to, between me, Mike, and the Sergeant Major, we're going to have something out for you next week.
Okay. There you go, guys. Hey, thanks for coming in, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.
See you guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.